Hey, what's up everybody? Mystery Wheel Gunner back here with you again to do another clean and chat video. Today I'll be cleaning a Smith and Wesson Model 629 Competitor in 44 Magnum. This has got to be one of my favorite revolvers. You can probably tell by how dirty it is. Yeah, I've been shooting this thing. So it's time to clean it. Yeah, sometimes I neglect that. I love shooting my guns, but I get lazy when cleaning them. Anywho, today, what are we going to talk about? Well, what am I going to talk about or ramble about? Movies. I've been retro watching some older movies. That's not any kind of judgment on newer movies. I'm not saying newer movies are bad. Just saying, for whatever reason, I've been watching older movies. So, one of the older movies I've been watching, Dirty Harry. Yeah. So, hey, kind of appropriate that I'm cleaning a 629, huh? Yes, I know Dirty Harry used a Model 29, and most assuredly the Performance Center, and this is a Performance Center gun. Most assuredly the Performance Center wasn't around back then, but the Model 29 is, or excuse me, the Model 629 is part of the Model 29 family. So, if we're going to think of the Model 29, formerly Model NT430, as the great-grandfather of all 44 Magnums, then this is like, a descendant, grandson, if you will, somewhere along the line. For those of you who don't know, yeah, when Smith and Wesson first introduced the world's first 44 Magnum revolver, yes, it was named, it had the factory designation of Model NT430, renamed in 1957 as the Model 29. As an aside, I think this is what causes some confusion. There are some people out there who think that, Ruger beat Smith and Wesson to the market, regarding the 44 Magnum. No. Ruger beat the most famous 44 Magnum to the market because, again, Model 29 didn't exist until 1957. And even then, it only existed on paper. The actual stamped or roll marked Model 29s did not appear until 1958. So yeah, you can say Ruger beat the Model 29 to market, but it did not beat Model NT430. So yes, Smith & Wesson beat everybody to the market with the 44 Magnum. And in fact, the correct order of events is Smith & Wesson in January of 1956, followed by Great Western with theirs, I believe June or July of that same year, and then Ruger in November of that year. So there you go, the true story. You can say Ruger beat Model 29, yes, but Model NT430, basically Model 29 before the name change, beat everyone to the market. All right, I forgot a little brush, so let me pause here while I go get it. Okay, where was I? Yeah, back to Dirty Harry. Oh, and check it out, I actually bought an actual cleaning brush. Did you know that Clint Eastwood was not the original actor that they gave the role to? That's right. Guess who got the role? Yeah, it was Frank Sinatra, believe it or not, yes. In fact, William Friedkin was set to direct. That's right, William Friedkin, the same guy who directed The French Connection and The Exorcist. Keep that in mind, and we're going to come back to that in a weird way. But Frank Sinatra dropped out of the role. I've read two different versions. You decide which one is correct. Version 1, oops, I did this wrong. Forgot my little guide here. Again, you don't really need this, just go slow, you're not going to hurt your gun, but I put it on there anyway. So one version is that when Frank Sinatra was shown the Model 29, Frank Sinatra thought the gun was too big. You know, for some reason, Sinatra objected to having such a big gun, and he wasn't moving on it. And I'm sure there were other reasons, but that's one of the reasons I keep hearing about. It's like Frank Sinatra didn't like having to carry the big Model 29. Another reason is that Frank Sinatra supposedly had injured his hand, and I guess he had trouble wielding the Model 29. He felt that he would look awkward on screen with an injured wrist, and trying to look cool and pose well with the big Model 29. I can sort of understand, but still kind of a strange reason to pull out of the movie. Anyway, when Frank Sinatra decided he wasn't going to do it, William Friedkin also decided, yeah, I'm gone too. But in a way, that kind of worked out because, like I said before, William Friedkin would go on to direct The French Connection, which was a great movie. So, just saying, if he didn't go on to direct French Connection, maybe someone else would have gotten the job, and maybe it wouldn't have come out as well. So, Dirty Harry was in production hell for a little bit, and they had to find a new actor, and they had to rework the script a little bit, because when William Friedkin was still on board, they pretty much tailor-made the script to, for Sinatra, his appearance and his age at the time. Sinatra was no longer a spring chicken at that point in his life, so they had to kind of tailor the story around, an older police inspector. Anyway, they went through an interesting list of possibles. One possibility was Robert Mitchum, which I find interesting because his brother John Mitchum made it into the Dirty Harry franchise. John Mitchum played the portly cop known as Frank DiGiorgio. He's the cop that Dirty Harry kept calling Fatso, and kept making references to having too much linguine. Remember that scene, the football stadium scene in Dirty Harry? DiGiorgio turns on all the stadium lights, and Dirty Harry's about to do some Dirty Harry stuff to the Scorpio Killer, and he tells DiGiorgio, "Take a walk, fatso." Yeah, I always love that scene. Anyway, DiGiorgio's character, or the character of DiGiorgio, was unfortunately killed off in the movie The Enforcer. So, anyway, would have been kind of neat, huh? Have the two Mitchum brothers in the same movie. Supposedly, Robert Mitchum passed on it because he was uncomfortable with the level of violence in the movie. Supposedly, George C. Scott had the same reason when he declined the role of Dirty Harry. Imagine that, George C. Scott as Dirty Harry. So anyway, the role would eventually... Oh, here's another one I heard. Now, I've heard very different stories on this one. John Wayne as Dirty Harry. So I've heard 3 different stories, and 2 of them kind of conflict. So one story I heard is that John Wayne was interested until he learned that Frank Sinatra had passed on the role. And all of a sudden he became indignant that he was basically being offered, Frank Sinatra's, sloppy seconds, basically. Now that's just one version. I don't know if that one's true. That's one that I've heard. Another version I heard is that John Wayne wanted the role, but the studio execs thought he was too old, which is kind of weird because, again, Frank Sinatra wasn't exactly young at that point in his life, and he was the first choice for Dirty Harry. So I'm not sure that one's totally true. The other one, I think this one is plausible, along with the whole I'm not going to get Frank Sinatra's sloppy seconds. The other story I've heard is that John Wayne wanted the role at first. And as he was going through the script, you have to remember, the original script was written for Frank Sinatra as Dirty Harry. So I guess they were reworking the script a little bit, changing it so that it could accommodate, a bunch of other actors, basically whoever they could get. And supposedly John Wayne read a version of the script that kind of made Dirty Harry look like a crooked cop. I mean, he wasn't a crooked cop, but that's how John Wayne had interpreted it in one of the reworked versions of the script. And John Wayne said, "Hey, I'm not going to be in a movie where I play a crooked cop," and so he declined the role. Now, one thing that is true, no matter which version you believe, is that John Wayne did regret not playing Dirty Harry, especially after Dirty Harry came out and he saw that, oh, okay, now I understand what the movie is about. Oopsie, I was wrong about, Dirty Harry being a crooked cop. I wish I would have taken on the role because, it's a pretty good movie. And you can see John Wayne's regret in the movies he did, specifically Brannigan and McHugh. Especially Brannigan. Brannigan is basically what if John Wayne did become Dirty Harry. Now, don't get me wrong. He didn't play Brannigan like he was playing Clint Eastwood, playing Dirty Harry, playing Brannigan. Okay, John Wayne was a smart guy. He knew that if he did that, the movie would absolutely suck. So he played Brannigan as Brannigan. He didn't try to be Dirty Harry, but it still kind of seems like, hey, if John Wayne did a Dirty Harry movie, this is how it would kind of look like. Especially in the opening titles. So remember the opening titles to Magnum Force, the second Dirty Harry movie? All we see is Dirty Harry. We see only his hand. At least we're assuming it's his hand. It could have been anyone else's, but he's holding the Model 29, so we assume that is Harry. And that's all we see. We just see the Model 29, Callahan's hand, and a red background. And guess what? We see a similar thing in Brannigan. In the opening of Brannigan, I already swabbed that out, didn't I? See what happens when I blab and clean? I forget things. Anyway. In Brannigan, the opening titles, it's just, whoops, look at me drip that oil all over there. The opening title to Brannigan, oh, excuse me, I got a cough here. Opening title to Brannigan, all we see is Brannigan's signature revolver, a Colt Diamondback chambered in .38 Special. Coincidence? Yeah, I don't think so. Anywho. So that's the weird production story of Dirty Harry. Yeah. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because nowadays we can't think of anybody else as Dirty Harry. But at one point in time, it could have been old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra. All right, so the whole William Friedkin thing. All right, I'm about to go on a weird tangent. And I'll admit, it is really weird. But hang with me. All right. Oops. Did I forget another brush? No, I didn't. I got it here with me somewhere. So, one of the other movies I've been retro watching is Hellraiser. Yeah, I like horror movies. And in the original Dirty Harry, Andrew Robinson plays the Scorpio Killer. And he reappears in Hellraiser, obviously as a different character. He plays both Frank and Larry Cotton in the movie. But I don't know, for some reason, I just, in my strange, weird mind, I'm like, oh, okay, so Kirsty Cotton, the main female protagonist, is like, oh, wow. Kirsty Cotton is the Scorpio Killer's daughter. That's amazing. Of course, these are two different characters in two different movies, but I just can't shake it. It's like, dang. For a while there, it's like Andrew Robinson didn't age. He doesn't look that much different in Hellraiser than he did in Dirty Harry. I mean, he's a little bit older, but, man, the guy aged pretty well. So anyway, for whatever reason, I started thinking, well, what if Dirty Harry had more of a, I don't know what you'd call it, not paranormal, but, kind of more of that strange twist, like a darker psychological twist to it. I mean, it already was pretty dark. Scorpio Killer was not a good person. Why did I take this out? I still gotta scrub the chambers here. Anywho, so can you imagine if, I don't know, Willem Friedkin had directed Dirty Harry and maybe put more of that Exorcist vibe in it, you know? And, fast forwarding to Hellraiser. What if they had a crossover? Yeah, I know, I'm talking real crazy now. Crossover Dirty Harry with Hellraiser. With an older, about to retire Harry Callahan investigating, You remember how in the Deadpool? Not that Deadpool, Dirty Harry the Deadpool. How he was investigating those letters. I forgot what they called them. The chain letter murders or whatever they were calling it. Instead, what if Dirty Harry had to investigate, the puzzle box murders? Huh? Yeah. The Scorpio Killer somehow comes back to life, and Dirty Harry sees, the pattern again. It's like, wait a minute, do we have a copycat killer? What's going on here? And as he investigates further, he finds that no, this is not a copycat. Scorpio's back. How is this possible? And yeah, I know, I guess some crossovers should never happen, but I always thought that would be a cool crossover. Final standoff, Dirty Harry versus the Hell Priest, aka Pinhead. Huh? Yeah. Model 29 versus those chains. It'd be a tough fight. I think Dirty Harry could win. Especially if it's his name on the title. You know how it goes. Yeah, I think of some strange things. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed the Dirty Harry movies as they are, but I always wonder, what if the Dirty Harry movies took on a more of a psychological horror twist? Kind of like Seven. Remember the movie Seven? What if it was Dirty Harry as one of the investigators, huh? Remember how Dirty Harry interrogated Scorpio in the football field? Imagine him interrogating Kevin Spacey in the same way. Anyway, what else? What else can we talk about? Oh, I also watched the sequel, Magnum. Well, to both movies. I watched the sequel to Hellraiser, Hellraiser 2 Hellbound, and also watched Magnum Force. In my opinion, it's just my opinion, I think Magnum Force is the best out of all the Dirty Harry movies. Again, not disparaging the rest of them. Obviously, the original Dirty Harry is important because that's the one that started it all, so I'm not disparaging that movie. But I like the way Magnum Force kind of settled some issues. It's like, how far would Dirty Harry go? Because there were talks of how Dirty Harry has some fascist overtones, especially when he got called into the office and they're like, so you broke into Scorpio Killer's, abode, without a warrant, and Dirty Harry's trying to explain he had probable cause, but hey, hold on now, he's got rights, It seemed like Dirty Harry treated the Constitution as kind of like just an inconvenience. But Magnum Force settled quite a bit of that. We saw the line that Dirty Harry will not cross. There was that part in Magnum Force where he meets the crooked cops. And the crooked cops are like, either you're with us or against us. And Dirty Harry says, I'm afraid you misjudged me. Basically, Dirty Harry saying, yeah, I know what you're about. I know what you've been doing. And, I figured it out. And no, I'm not joining you. You misjudged me. It's kind of weird, though, how the lead guy, Briggs, well, the police chief in charge or whoever, this thing is tight in there. Briggs. I'm surprised Briggs didn't try to recruit Harry right from the beginning, you know. But I guess he didn't want to tip his hat. Or maybe he already knew that, nah, Harry's a lot of things, but he's no vigilante cop. But also, got some other cool things in that movie. Of course, the pistol showdown, right? David Soul and his Colt Python in the pistol match versus Dirty Harry and his Model 29. Also brings in some controversy, remember? Dirty Harry's tagline in the original movie, this is a .44 Magnum, most powerful handgun in the world, will blow your head clean off. And then we get to Magnum Force in the police shooting range when he first meets the rookies, and Sweet asks him, what kind of load do you use in that .44? And Harry responds, he uses a light special. And he explains that in a gun of that size, the gun, with the light specials, it gives him better control than with 357 Magnum using wad cutters. Having trouble here. Pushing this thing in. I should probably just reconnect this, huh? So what does Harry use? Does he use the Magnum? Or does he use light special? Because the movies kind of conflict there. Anyway, one of the explanations I've heard is that I guess Clint Eastwood misunderstood the script. He was supposed to say a special light Magnum. Instead he said light special. Whatever. I still like to think he uses .44 Magnums. If he has to use light Magnum, kind of makes sense. Because you remember in, I believe it was The Enforcer. Remember that scene where Harry, shoots from a corner, holding that big Model 29 in a very awkward fashion, and he shoots it one-handed while, pointing the gun around the corner. It's like, oh, come on. If he was shooting actual magnums out of that thing, that gun would have flown out of his hand. Or maybe would have broken his wrist, or at least sprained it. Alright, let me hold it up to the light here. That looks good. Looks nice and shiny. Almost done. And the Hellraiser 2. Andrew Robinson does not come back in that film. Supposedly he was dissatisfied with the script and really had no interest in coming back. He was offered the role again. I'm not sure what role they would have given him because, he was dead. His character was dead. His evil brother came back, though, but not sure where the good brother, Larry Cotton, would have had a role, except to maybe serve as a guide for his daughter, Kirsty. All good movies. If you never watched the Hellraiser series, go watch it. The older ones hold up, especially 1 and 2. They hold up really well, especially the practical creature effects, especially when they show Frank Cotton coming back to life. Oh, those are really good effects. Now, on the downside, that magical electricity effect from the puzzle box, yeah, that looks really cheesy by today's standards. But hey, they were using what they had back in the day. So those effects look a little cheesy, but the rest of it still looks good today, even with all the CG we've got. And I think the practical effects in Hellraiser still outdo some of the cheaper CG effects now. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be some total fuddy-duddy. I recognize that, man, CG effects have come a long way. They really have. It's at the point where, unless you really work in the industry, I'm pretty sure most of us would have problems spotting, is that practical effect or is that CG? Because CG's really gotten great. But I'm still a fan of practical effects. But again, I do recognize that, yeah, you can do a lot with good CG. Because we've also seen bad CG. All right, looks like I'm pretty much done here, though. Clean out the... Whoa, there was a lot of dirt on those notches. Give it one more pass through here. So barrel swabbed out. Inside of the frame swabbed out. I cleaned here, right? Yeah, let me give that a final wipe down. Let me get a new patch. And I think it's pretty much done. Yep. Ballast off will leave that very light layer of oil on there, so that's all good. All that's really left to do is just give it a gentle wipe down. But alrighty, hey, once again, thanks for tuning in and sticking around, watching me clean the gun and ramble on with you. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. Share the channel with your friends. Leave some comments in the comment section. Hey, take care out there. Catch you next time.